Hello, candle lovers! Thank you for tuning in to me today. My name is Greg, and this is all Aboot candles. Happy Sunday, everyone. Every Sunday, I like to do the weekly wax wrap up. This is when I go through all of the candles that I have finished burning recently, talk about how they smelled, how they performed, all of that good stuff. Once I get through the candles, I usually do a little bit of random candle chit chat here and there, go a little bit off topic. We're gonna have to catch up on our trashy TV show chat. Specifically, we need to discuss the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I know that not everything in these videos are going to appeal to everybody, so feel free to use the chapters below to navigate to whichever candle or topic you're most interested in hearing about. That is why I put the chapters down there for you. Got a lot of candles from Candle Day to discuss. I have managed to finish quite a few Candle Day candles. I'd say with really mixed results. You know, I think a lot of us have been talking about how weak some of the candles from Candle Day were, which was obviously a bummer. But I actually have a couple candles here that were relatively strong. In fact, one of these candles I would even call a powerhouse. The problem for me was that all of the fragrances that I really liked and I was really excited about were like the weakest candles, and all of the fragrances that I still purchased and wanted to try, but I wasn't in love with, those are the ones, of course, that were super duper strong. Anyways, let's kick things off here with Hot Fudge Drizzle. They put out this sort of ice cream shop collection for Candle Day, which I thought was a really fun, like, cohesive collection. Not a lot of fragrances in this collection that are really like my favorite types of fragrances, but I still picked up quite a few of them and wanted to give them a try. I thought that the packaging was really fun, really cute, really tasty looking, and we had a cool like green waffle cone lid on this collection, which I thought was a really nice touch. I like the way that the lids look. I think that the look was really, really nice, but I don't think that they were really the greatest lids in a lot of other ways. Like, the lid is completely plastic here, and so this lip that will sort of like grip onto the candle so it doesn't come off. Some of the candles, the wraparound label doesn't quite go all the way up to the top, and so this plastic lip would sort of settle behind it and look really kind of weird and uneven in certain parts. But I mean, this is me being very, very nitpicky here. They did tend to look sort of crooked as well when you kind of had them lined up on your shelf. There was just something about them that was a touch crooked, but I mean, it was something a little bit different, something kind of fun, and so I appreciated the extra effort with these like green plastic waffle cone lids. The scent notes on Hot Fudge Drizzle are rich melted chocolate, vanilla bean, and a dash of brown sugar. Now, you know, I can't really say vanilla and brown sugar. Yeah, sure, I guess that's in there. What this really smells like to me is a chocolate sauce syrup, specifically the chocolate sauce, the Hershey's chocolate sauce syrup that you can pick up in the grocery store to like take home to put on your ice cream. It really reminds me of that. The problem is it's not a particularly like rich, elevated smelling chocolate fragrance. It's a little bit sweeter than I think that I would have liked for it to have been. I would have liked a bit more of like a rich, dark, like semi-sweet milk chocolate, whereas this is, you know, a Hershey's chocolate sauce. So this is the chocolate sauce that you're gonna get at the grocery store, as opposed to the type of chocolate sauce that you might get on your dessert at a really nice restaurant or something like that. Does that make any sense? Like, it's nice. It definitely smells like a Hot Fudge Drizzle, just kind of like a grocery store-bought, slightly cheapish smelling Hot Fudge Drizzle. It definitely delivers on what they say they're doing here. The candle burned pretty nicely for the most part. I burned it all the way down till there was really nothing left there, and you can see that the whole candle had liquefied. It was a pretty clean burn for the most part, but I did notice that the last third third of it started to get a little bit discolored, and I really don't think that that was my fault. I was pretty mindful with this candle. I don't think I ever left it burning for a lot longer than I should have, but at the end there we were definitely starting to get like swirls of darkness and murkiness. I never really caught it sooting or giving me any terrible problems like that, and I burned it all the way down until I think that one of the wicks like extinguished itself at one point. I'd say that the strength and throw on this was acceptable. It was definitely a 6 in my more open space, which is pretty good. Like, it was very noticeable. It definitely had a presence to it. I did burn it one time in the bedroom just because I wanted to see what the strength and throw would be like in there, and it was definitely easily getting to a 7 in the bedroom for strength and throw, which is really good. So this is definitely one of the stronger candles that I think that we got for Candle Day this year, which makes sense because it's not one of the fragrances that I was super excited about. So of course it's gonna be one of the really good strong ones. I also did a sugared waffle cone, very sort of similar vibe with the packaging on this one and that green like waffle cone lid. No complaints about the packaging. I think it's nice, it's cute, it's tasty looking. This is definitely a repackage of Sugar Cone Crunch, which we saw for the first time in the summer, in that summer collection that was a real mismatch of all kinds of things. Like, it had a watermelon candle and a Palo Santo candle and the Sugar Cone Crunch, and I feel like they kind of replaced Berry Waffle Cone with the Sugar Cone Crunch in the summertime, which a lot of people weren't thrilled about. But now we're getting it as Sugared Waffle Cone. And the scent notes are freshly baked sugar cone, caramel sea salt, and gooey marshmallow. And I really like fragrances like this. When it comes to more like bakery, gourmand fragrances, I tend to prefer just pretty straightforward, like cakey vanilla fragrances. And that's definitely what this is. One thing that I do appreciate about this fragrance is I love when fragrances are able to convey the texture that they're trying to get across, and you definitely do pick up on that sort of crunchy, almost flaky texture in this fragrance. But for the most part, yeah, it smells like a waffle cone with like vanilla ice cream in the waffle cone. Yeah, I like this candle. I liked Sugar Cone Crunch, and when I smelled this in the store during Candle Day, I could tell it was a repackage, and I was like, hey, why not? I'll give it a try. It burned pretty well for the most part, but once again, definitely some dirtiness happening on the last third of the candle there. Not quite as bad as that Hot Fudge Drizzle, but you can see, like, this was just plain colored wax. So you can see that by the end there, I did end up with a fair amount of discoloration. I'd say that the strength and throw on this was the same as the one in the summertime. It was acceptable, probably about a 5.5, maybe getting up to a 6 in my more open space, probably a 6.5, almost a 7 in the bedroom. So definitely like had a presence to it. I could smell it. It was fine. I think that one of the things about this collection Bath and Body Works was telling us was that we should burn several of these candles at the same time and sort of create your own like ice cream fragrance experience, right? So some of the other candles in this collection were like the glazed cherries, the Neapolitan ice cream, there was a butterscotch candle, and so you could burn like 2 or more of them, I guess, if you wanted, all at the same time and sort of create whatever kind of ice cream experience that you wanted. And I did actually burn both of these at the same time, which I thought was fun. I burned them both at the same time in my more open space once or twice, and it was definitely giving me some strong like vanilla chocolate ice cream cone vibes. When I was burning these both at the same time in my more open area, it was like a 7 or a 7.5 fragrance experience, and I did think that these two went pretty nicely together, sort of gave a little bit more of a vanilla and a bit more of a texture to the chocolate fragrance. So I did think think that was kind of fun. And that's why I ended up like finishing them off right around the same time. I like both of these candles. Not really the types of fragrances that I go crazy for. You know what I mean? But I thought that there was a nice, fun-looking, cohesive collection that a lot of people really seem to enjoy. I noticed, at least in the stores that I go to, that this collection by far was like the fastest collection to sell out. I think that these were all snatched up at my stores on like the first day of Candle Day. So I do feel lucky to have purchased them. I purchased some of the other ones from this collection too. I think they're gonna have to wait until summer. There was, I got the Napoleon ice cream, I got the cherry candle, I got the butterscotch candle, but yeah, those are all probably gonna wait until summertime for me. I also finished up a Dark Kiss from Bath and Body Works, and I feel like this candle, I've seen it come out in the States before, but this was the first time, to my recollection, this was the first time that we ever saw Dark Kiss as a 3-wick candle up here in Canada. So I was pretty excited to get my hands on it and give it a try. I thought that the packaging on this candle was really gorgeous. We just had a boring lid on here, but the way that this sort of wraparound is kind of cut out, particularly like the shape of the flower petals around the top there was sort of a sheerness to some of this, and it just glowed really, really beautifully when it was burning. I thought this candle just looked fantastic. The scent notes on here are black raspberry, burgundy rose, bergamot incense, dark vanilla bean, and plum musk. Wow, way to be a little bit extra with the fragrance notes on this one, Bath and Body Works. Raspberry, rose, bergamot, vanilla, plum. Yeah, I mean, for me, the most prominent scent notes in here are probably the raspberry and the musk. The raspberry, the musk, and the plum. I feel like there's some vanilla probably getting a little bit lost. Bergamot, yeah, maybe just a little bit of a citrusy component happening at like the top of the fragrance. But mostly for me, this is kind of like a dark fruit and rose fragrance. I really actually liked the fragrance. The problem with this fragrance is it reminds me a little bit of some other fragrances that I like more. For example, we got that Maleficent candle for the Disney Villains collaboration earlier in 2025, and I liked Maleficent more than this. It also reminds me just a touch of my beloved Into the Night, except this seems a bit to me like sort of like a diet version of Into the Night. Like it just doesn't pack quite as much of a punch. I feel like there's something in this candle and in this fragrance that had a little bit of almost a watered down effect for me. And maybe that's partially because it didn't have great performance when it was burning. This one was a really, really nice clean burn all the way down to the bottom. You can see there, the wax got a little bit discolored right at the end, but for the most part, it's pretty clean. It's a lot cleaner than that waffle cone and the hot fudge drizzle candles were by the end of it. And I mean, I burned this one down right until there was nothing left there. So I was really happy with its performance, like in terms of cleanliness. The strength and throw though wasn't great. Like if I'm being generous in my more open area, I'd say that it got to a 5. For me, a 5 in whichever space I'm referencing, a 5 means that I could walk into that space and I could just detect that it was there. And I could walk into my more open living room area and I could tell that it was burning. I could detect it on most of its burns, but its first couple burns, I was really like, oh, this one is a fail. I think the first 2 times that I burned it, it was not getting up to a 5. It was probably like about a 4. I had to be standing, fairly near it to be able to smell it. But then when I got to some of the better burns with like deeper wax pools, it did eventually get up to that 5 in my more open space. Put it in the bedroom. It was getting up to maybe a 5.5 in there. It was just missing the mark for me in terms of like strength and throw. And then that caused me once again to think about a candle like Maleficent or Into the Night that I liked a little bit more, but was similar, but also stronger. Right? And so this candle just ended up feeling a little bit redundant to me, but I'm still glad that I experienced it and I thought that the candle looked beautiful and it is a nice fragrance, but I don't know, yeah, something about it, and probably mostly the strength and throw more than anything else, something about it just came across as if it was a little bit muted, a little bit watered down. So, yeah, barely a passing grade for Dark Kiss. Like I said, if I'm being generous, I could give it on average a 5 in my more open space. Okay, Platinum. I really, really liked how Platinum smelled. And I love the way that this candle looks. It's giving me some disco ball, like Madonna, Confessions on a Dance Floor realness. Very, very appropriate packaging for a candle called Platinum. I thought that this candle just looked great. Plain boring lid on this candle. The scent notes on Platinum are sparkling bergamot, silver blooms, and patchouli musk. I was really happy to see this candle come out in 3-wick for Candle Day here because I think that when the scent originally got released, we only saw it in a single wick. And I wasn't about to try out a candle for the first time in a single wick, but I smelled it in the store and I smelled the body care too. And I really do like this fragrance. It's definitely... it's very on trend right now to have those sort of like brassy, like metallic floral vibes. And this is definitely what that is. It says sparkling bergamot and silver blooms. I can't even really quite put my finger on what type of floral I would say that this is. Probably like a white floral, like a sharper kind of white floral, but not quite as strong as like a gardenia or something like that. It's not a really, really sweet white floral, kind of one of those like medium white florals, and a considerable amount of musk. There's also, it says patchouli musk, but I don't really pick up on the patchouli either. A very like brassy and musky white floral with just a touch of that bergamot in there. Which gives the top end of the fragrance a little bit more personality. I actually found it to be a little bit more top heavy than I thought it would be when it was burning, in terms of like that sort of brightness, that brashness, that brassiness. But I liked it for the most part, and this candle burned really beautifully. I mean, this was a very, very clean burn, all the way down to the very bottom there. It was not sooting, not giving me any problems. The wax was never getting murky or swirly or weird whatsoever. It just absolutely burned like a dream. I'd say the strength and throw was like barely a passing grade though. In my more open space, it was probably a 5. So I could tell that it was there, but I didn't feel like I could really smell it enough to sort of really experience it, Put it in the bedroom for a little while where I'd say it was probably still only really getting up to about a 5.5. Yeah, I liked Platinum though. I don't know if this is really going to be a repurchase for me or a big recommendation for you, but I enjoyed it. I actually picked up one of the Pure Wonder candles on Candle Day, and I'd say that out of all of the sort of body care candles that they put out, I think the Pure Wonder is the one that's doing the best. I haven't started Into the Stars and Into the Night though, or what is it? In the Stars and Into the Night. Into the Night is one of my very favorite candles from Bath & Body Works, so I know I'm gonna like that one. And same thing with In the Stars. So I haven't started burning those two yet because I more or less just bought them for like backup because I knew what they were gonna be like. They're usually decent candles. Platinum though, yeah, once again, just doesn't really hit the mark. I think I would rather be burning Pure Wonder or even In the Stars, It was all right, though. It was okay. I also finished burning Vanilla Balsam, and this one really actually kind of broke my heart. This is the Vanilla Balsam that came out on Candle Day, and I absolutely love Vanilla Balsam. It's easily my top 5 like winter fragrances from Bath & Body Works. In fact, in my weekly wax wrap up like not too long ago, one of the burning questions I was asked was my top 5 favorite winter candles from BBW, and I think I put this one in like second or third place. Can't say I was a huge fan of the packaging on this collection. It just looks a little bit, I don't know, it looks a little bit clustered and messy. For me, when it comes to candle packaging, I tend to feel like the simpler the better. It's not terrible though, boring lid on here. This collection also had that reindeer. Was it rum reindeer? Run reindeer? No, rum reindeer, like rum the drink, which I thought was really interesting, but I think that one's gonna have to wait until next winter for me to burn it. Anyways, Vanilla Balsam I absolutely love. The scent notes are balsam for frosted vanilla and snow-capped pine needles. I really think that this might be one of Bath & Body Works' best fragrances just overall, even not taking into account like what season it is. They do such a good job in this candle of balancing the balsam and the vanilla, and it's very simple, you know, there's not like a ton going on in here. It does kind of feel like they almost just take fresh balsam and then add that vanilla component to it, but the way that they balance it out is just excellently done, and you get all of that like balsamy goodness just smoothed out with a really nice, like rich and semi-sweet vanilla. And it's just such a smooth fragrance, you know, for sort of foresty, outdoorsy candle. The vanilla just gives it this really interesting smoothness that I've always really liked. Unfortunately, though, this version of Vanilla Balsam really kind of broke my heart. It was so weak. I think that this is the weakest Vanilla Balsam I've ever burned. It's varied over the years. I always pick up Vanilla Balsam, so I've burned it every year for a long time now. And it used to be a 7 in like a more open space. I used to be able to say that this candle was easily hitting that 7 for strength and throw. I'd say that this version just barely got to a 5. In fact, I don't even think I can give it a 5 in my more open space. In the bedroom, it was getting to a 5. In my more open space, though, it was probably hovering around like a 4 or a 4.5 for the most part. It was really disappointing, actually. Yeah, it definitely maxed down at like a 4.5 in my more open space. So I did keep it in the bedroom almost the entire time that I was burning it, so I could at least detect it. I'd say that some of the best burns on it, it was getting to a 5.5 up until the very end of the candle. So once we got to the very bottom here, I just let the candle like go off completely. The whole candle had liquefied, and I probably shouldn't have. I'm guessing that there was some soot coming off of this candle, but once there was like almost an inch of wax left, the whole thing liquefied, and I just let it go off because at that point it was finally giving me some real strength and throw. Like that very last burn there, it was finally getting up to like a 5.5 or a 6 in my bedroom right at the last burn. But in order for it to get up to that point, I'm suspecting that it put a little bit of soot up on those walls because it was definitely like a bigger, deeper wax pool than I usually let happen with a BBW candle. And you can actually see the dirtiness that happened from that last burn there. And I mean, I just let it go off. I was so happy that I could finally smell the darn thing. I just let it completely go until it extinguished itself. And like those 2 wicks sort of extinguished themselves first, and then that one last wick just kept going for a little bit longer. I mean, gosh, it was overall just really, really disappointing because it's one of my favorite candles from BBW. And I mean, I know I used to be able to put Vanilla Balsam in my more open space. I've been here for like 8 years. So back when I first moved in here, Vanilla Balsam was giving me a very solid 7 in my more open area. And now it's barely getting to the point where it's detectable with this version. Just so disappointing. Oh, same story with Snow Day, to be honest with you guys. Another one that I really loved the way that it smelled on cold, and I was so excited to have a snow day again, but it was just not giving me the strength and throw that I wanted. This was from the From the Vault collection. I guess this candle first started coming out in 2023. The From the Vault candles were definitely the ones that I was the most interested in, right? Like there was smoked vanilla, peppermint marshmallow, like those were the candles that I was really excited to get my hands on. And they also ended up being like the weakest candles so far that I've burned from Candle Day. But anyways, yeah, Snow Day From the Vault, pretty boring packaging on this candle, just like a square label in the center there with plain colored wax. I don't think that this is the lid that came with this candle. I think there was a little bit of a mix-up. There was a little bit of a mix-up in the candle closet, and this lid just ended up finding its home on Snow Day. The scent notes here are spruce branches, peppermint, and sweet vanilla. And oh my goodness, do I love this fragrance. Yeah, out of all that Candle Day stuff, I'd say that my favorite fragrances were the smoked vanilla and this Snow Day candle, but they also just happened to be two of the weakest candles that I purchased. I mean, this is just lovely though. It's got a really, really great foresty feel. And you definitely pick up on like a considerable amount of that mintiness and the vanilla, but it still manages to somehow smell really natural and outdoorsy. It doesn't just smell like a bunch of like peppermint vanilla candies in the middle of a forest. Like something about the peppermint and the vanilla notes in here smell very like earthy and bright and crisp and like natural. And something, the spruce branches note in here is really, really lovely. There's a note in here, like the spruce note in here, just reminds me a touch of that Winter White Woods candle from Bath and Body Works that I really love. This candle doesn't smell like Winter White Woods, but there's a component in here that reminds me quite a bit of one of the components in Winter White Woods. And it's that sort of spruce tree, like sort of a mix of like woodsiness and balsam. I feel like I pick up on a little bit of cedar in this fragrance. And the mintiness is really nice. Oh, I just loved this fragrance so much. But man, this candle was another really frustrating burn. It burned really nicely and cleanly. Like, I burned it all the way down to the bottom there, and it was never really sooting or getting dark and murky or swirly or anything. It was a really, really beautiful burn. But once again, it was really lost in my more open space. Like, maybe it was getting to like maybe a 4.5 for strength and throw. I definitely can't give it a 5 in my more open area because I had to go searching for this fragrance. You know how it is when you're like, don't you hate that? Don't you hate it when you have to search around for it like that? I had to be standing like 4 feet away from my coffee table. And already at that point, you know, when a candle's on my coffee table, that fragrance, it should be lifting up to my 6'1", 6'1" face, right? But it just wasn't doing it. I had to be like 4 feet away from it and going like this to be able to smell this darn thing. So yeah, I'd give it like, I don't know, maybe even just a 3.5 or a 4. Say it averaged a 4 in the more open area. I put it into the bedroom for a while, and in there I could just barely detect it. So I would give it a 5 for the bedroom. I could walk in there and definitely tell that it was burning, but I wasn't really experiencing the fragrance enough to truly appreciate it, like even in the bedroom, you know? So another bummer on this candle for strength and throw. And I just liked this fragrance so much. I picked up extras of quite a few of some of these. Like I got 2 smoked vanillas, 2 of those peppermint marshmallows, like 3 snow days because I liked it so much on cold. But what I'm going to be doing with the other ones is I'm going to be putting them under a candle lamp and seeing if I get a little bit more out of them that way, because I just guess that's where we're at right now for candles. We've got to try and see what we can do to help that strengthen throw, because Bath and Body Works certainly isn't helping us out at all. All right, I also finished up a couple of lavender and pine candles. This version was from this year, and this version was from last year. Yeah, 2024, and it came out for the very first time last year, and we were really, really excited about it. But the one from last year, the big note that everybody had was that there was hardly any lavender in here. And I agree with that. Like, the one from last year was just barely even like a floral whisper, it felt like. Like you could tell there was like that sort of lavendery floral component happening on some lower level, but it was very hard to pick out the lavender in last year's version. I 100% think that they put a little bit more lavender in this year's version. Still not a ton. In fact, I still would like for there to have been a bit more lavender, but they are actually fairly different. I get more of a fresh balsam vibe from this candle. Kind of like an almost muted version of fresh balsam with a little bit of that floral in there. Whereas this one has maybe like 10% lavender, 90% that sort of pine forest balsam vibe. I'd say that this one, they upped the lavender maybe to like 30% lavender, right? And like 70% like balsam and pine and woods and stuff. I thought both of these candles looked really lovely. I'll speak specifically about this year's version. A really beautiful wraparound on here, and it looked gorgeous when it was burning as well. I like wraparound candles in the wintertime that are just sort of like snowscapes like that. Really, really pretty when it was burning, because there was definitely a bit of a sheerness to the wraparound. We just had a boring lid on this one. And the scent notes are freshly picked lavender, cedar wood bark, and frosted pine. And yeah, it's distinctly like a cedar wood note. I pick up on a fair bit of like cedar and balsam. In fact, I've got a balsam and cedar candle here from Yankee, and there's a component to this candle that is very similar to that Yankee candle. I really liked this one this year, actually. I still wish there was a little bit more of that lavender component in there, but I think that they definitely made just a little bit of a slight improvement on this year's version, and I do detect the floral component a bit more. And there's also a really nice sort of sharp richness from the cedar wood, and then that balsamy vibe from the frosted pine. Yeah, overall, I really liked it. And I'd say that this candle actually performed a little bit better than it did last year as well. So hey, I gotta report on some good news if that's what my experience was. It feels like this is actually a candle that some improvements were made this year. I mean, it burned really beautifully all the way down to the bottom there. It had those thin core wicks on it. Really had to like limit your burn times. But I got all the way down to the bottom with hardly any problems and really nice clean wax right at the very end there. I'd say that the strength and throw was probably about a 5, maybe a 5.5 in my more open space, and a 6 in the bedroom. Yeah, I would probably say that. It definitely was like noticeable, detectable. It wasn't a powerhouse though, and also when the candle's burning, the lavender gets even more lost. But in this version, I could detect it. This version from last year when it was burning, I couldn't really pick up on the floral component whatsoever. But this year, when this one was burning, yeah, I could tell that there was some floral vibes happening. Yeah, so I'm happy to say that it seems like they made some positive changes. You know, both of these candles looked really gorgeous, but I actually think last year's was even prettier. Look at that. And this one looked great when it was burning as well. And we had like a fun snowflake lid on last year's version. I am happy that it seems like they actually made some improvements on the candle. If they're gonna bring it out again next year, I would like for there to be even more of a lavender component, because it still gets a little bit lost when it's actually burning. Anyways, that was Lavender and Pine. I also finished up this coffee and donuts from Candle Day. And I have to say that this is probably the strongest candle that I've burned that I got on Candle Day. In fact, one of the strongest candles I've burned from Bath & Body Works in a while, which is honestly kind of a bummer because I was not obsessed with this fragrance. I really wasn't. This is from that Better Together collection with these like sort of goofy square cartoon labels on them. And so this had the popcorn and slushy, we had the pizza and ranch, and the chips and salsa. I am really not a big fan of like savory food candles, so I didn't even bother picking up the pizza and ranch or the chips and salsa. I did get the popcorn and slushy candle. I would say easily that the popcorn and slushy candle was like the least offensive out of this whole collection. It's the one that offended me the least. And coffee and donuts, I didn't mind the way that it smelled in the store, and so I figured I'd give it a try. The scent notes on here just say, a rainy Saturday with warm French roast and a glazed donut pastry. Yeah, I didn't love this. This was giving me some flashbacks to that horrible, what was it, cinnamon coffee cake, or that candle we got in the fall, cinnamon sugar coffee cake. Ooh, this was kind of giving me flashbacks to that cinnamon sugar coffee cake candle that I really didn't like. I didn't think it smelled so bad in the store, honestly. And like a trooper, I got through this whole candle. I mean, to be honest with you, I could probably burn it one more time. I'm just not interested in getting one last burn out of it. It's got a lot of that cinnamon in there, and it doesn't quite go into like that red hot cinnamon territory, but it's definitely a sharper cinnamon than I really like. Like, it's definitely got like not only a sharpness, but sort of a weird kind of dryness to it. And the coffee note in here isn't fantastic either. It's kind of comes across to me more like an espresso than a coffee, but not a very good espresso, you know, kind of one of those espressos that almost feels like it's a little bit too roasted, like gets a little bit burnt. There's a teeny tiny bit of sort of a pastry thing happening here, but mostly it's just that kind of weird cinnamon note with that roasted, like toasted sort of coffee component, and that's really all there is. Like, I don't pick up on, you know, it says a glazed donut pastry. I don't really pick up on like a sweet sugary glaze, and I barely pick up on like a starchy, like bready donutty component. It's just a ton of that like that weird like cinnamon note and the coffee note, and it was just too much for me. And this is, of course, probably one of the strongest candles that I've burned from Bath & Body Works in a hot minute. I'm trying to think if I can even specifically pick out a Bath & Body Works candle that I've burned recently that was this strong. I mean, I'm burning a Blush Amber and Peony right now, which is a powerhouse of a candle, but a very, very different fragrance from this. I'd say that in my more open space, this was like a 7.5 for strength and throw. That cinnamon note traveled throughout my entire house. Like, when I was burning this in my more open space, I could smell it when I was in the bathroom. I could smell it down the the hall. I did not dare put this in the bedroom. This is not the type of fragrance I'd want in the bedroom anyways. I bet if I put this in the bedroom, it would be like an 8, 8.5, 9 almost for strength and throw. And it's just such a bummer because out of all of the candles to finally like pack a punch and really give it to me good, it was this coffee and donuts fragrance. And it could have been a nice coffee and donuts fragrance, but I personally don't think that this was a nice coffee and donuts fragrance. It almost felt a little bit assaultive. I was not thrilled with it, to be honest with you. I can't even believe that I got through the whole thing. I mean, honestly, if I didn't want to like be able to do a complete like post-burn review for you guys, I probably would have given this candle away after a couple of burns, but I really like to see things through so that I can come back here and trash talk with you folks. Hey, if you guys did like this fragrance, no judgment whatsoever. I mean, this is just not the type of fragrance that is in my wheelhouse. If people out there that do like this fragrance probably really enjoyed this candle, because not only do I think it was the strongest candle that we got for Candle Day that I've burned so far, but it's one of the strongest candles that Bath and Body Works has had on their shelves in a while. Ugh, just not great luck, you know, for me in terms of my fragrance preferences. And it burned really great too. And a lot of the time, like colored wax like this from Bath and Body Works, you're gonna end up with like dudding out issues and whatnot, but this never dudded out on me. This was a very, very strong soldier, just coming in at like an 8 out of 10 in a more open space at times. Holy smokes, that was a strong one. And I do have another strong candle here actually from Bath and Body Works, this Peppermint Bark Truffle. This wasn't quite as strong as the coffee and donuts candle, but I'd say it was on the stronger side of things. One of the strongest candles that Bath and Body Works has had on their floor this fall and winter for sure. This was part of that Milk Bar collaboration. And I like the packaging on these candles. I think that this was a fun collection for the gourmand lovers out there. I know a lot of people ended up really enjoying a lot of these candles. My only note for the packaging is I think it would have been nice if they had made this label sort of wrap all the way around the jar so that we sort of saw those pieces of like chocolate and candy cane like go all of the way around. I think that that would have been a nice touch, but overall it was fun packaging. We got a colored lid without any sort of a logo on it, which means I'm probably gonna save this one. And basically to me, this was peppermint hot chocolate from Bath and Body Works. I wouldn't say it was 100% repackaged by any means. In fact, I think peppermint hot chocolate is actually a little bit of a stronger candle than this one was, but I actually think that this was a little bit of a nicer and a more nuanced fragrance than peppermint hot chocolate. And I did notice we didn't get peppermint hot chocolate this year, and we've been getting peppermint hot chocolate every year for quite a while now, and I suspect part of the reason that we didn't get it this year is because on the floor we had something that was so incredibly similar, which was this Peppermint Bark Truffle. The scent notes on here are peppermint chocolate cake, crushed candy cane, and white chocolate. Now, my wish would be that I was actually picking up on some of that white chocolate. I really don't pick up on a white chocolate. I just pick up on like a sort of semi-darkish, like it's almost not as creamy and sweet as like a milk chocolate note. It almost feels like it lands somewhere between a dark chocolate and a milk chocolate. And it's a very strong chocolate note. And I'd say that it's got an equal amount of the peppermint in there. And that's really all that I pick up on in here is that chocolate note and that peppermint note. I'm not really getting a cakey gourmand because it says peppermint chocolate cake. I don't really get anything like starchy or cakey in here. I really only get that chocolate and that peppermint. I do wish that there was a little bit of a detectable white chocolate in here for me, and maybe a little bit of like a more bakery component. But for me, this just really reminded me of maybe a slightly nicer and more nuanced peppermint hot chocolate. That peppermint hot chocolate from Bath and Body Works is just so sharp and strong, and I'd say that the biggest difference here is that something about the chocolate fragrance is just a little bit smoother and a little bit softer. Yeah, this candle performed really well. In fact, I noticed that most of the candles that I've burned from the Milk Jar collection have been really good performers, like not dudding out, really, really nice clean burns all the way from like beginning to end there. I don't have any complaints really about the way that this candle burned, and the strength and throw on here was very good as well. I'd say in my more open space, it was getting to like a 6.5 or a 7 pretty easily. I definitely give some of the burns on here. They were definitely clocking in at a 7. Never put this in a smaller space, not a fragrance that I would want in the bedroom or the bathroom, but you know, it was definitely giving a very good amount of strength and throw in the more open area, so that's where it stayed. Yeah, overall, not my favorite type of fragrance, but I would have no reason like not to recommend that candle, to be honest with you. I also did finish up something from Yankee. This is Balsam and Cedar. And this is the like newest format that we're getting from Yankee Candle. Not format, they've had their 3 wicks around for a while now, but this is their latest sort of label iteration here. I think that they're okay. They're not great. I mean, yeah, Yankee just has really been struggling with the packaging for quite a while now. And something about the labels that they're using now just don't quite work for me. The way that there's like a box within that thin border inside of it, and then that other box that's off to the side that goes past the border of the inside border of the label. It just ends up looking kind of peculiar and crooked. And you know, someone said to me not too long ago in the comment section, we were just kind of making fun of the way a lot of the Yankee candles have been looking for the last decade. And someone said to me that they have nicer candles at Walmart, like the Walmart brand of candles, and a lot of the brands that they sell at Walmart look a lot nicer than the Yankee candles, and I have to agree with that. And in fact, in Canada right now, the best place to get Yankee candles is at Walmart. And when you go and you look at the whole candle section in the Walmart, the ones that grab your eye the least are the Yankee candles. I mean, they've got beautiful wax on all their candles, and that can be pretty eye-catching. But for the most part, I'm like, Yankee, like your candles are getting lost sitting next to like the Walmart brand, like the Mainstays candles. Like they're popping better than these are. And these are like 2 or 3 times the price. Anyways, yeah, so I've been really monitoring the Yankee candle situation at the Walmart ever since they came back into the Canadian market. And what you can get, at least at the location that I've been to recently, they have those little studio candles, which I would never buy because I'm guessing that they have absolutely zero strength and throw. Same with the 1-wick pillars that you can also get. You can also get the big apothecary single wicks, and I'm actually burning one of those right now in a different fragrance. And then you can get the 3 wicks and the sort of tall like 2-wick tumblers. This was my first time burning a 3-wick from Yankee Candle in a very, very long time. A lot of people are saying that the 3 wicks are giving them the best strength and throw. I honestly think that the 3 wicks and the 2-wick tumblers are about the same when it comes to strength and throw. I mean, the diameter of the candles are almost identical, and I'm not convinced that having an extra wick really makes that much of a difference. It's all about how much of a sort of surface area of melted wax that you're getting, and there's very little difference in that regard between the 3 wicks and the 2 wicks. But I wanted to try out some of the 3 wicks since I saw them on the shelves, and so I got this Balsam and Cedar. I also got the dried lavender and oak in a 3 wick, and I also got the cozy cashmere in a 3 wick. The cozy cashmere is basically unscented. The dried lavender and oak is doing a little bit better, but I was really actually impressed with how this Balsam and Cedar candle performed. However, Balsam and Cedar has always been a very strong performer for Yankee. It's still not as strong as it used to be, but I definitely go so far as to say that, at least from what I burn, Balsam and Cedar is one of the strongest candles that they currently have right now. I got the scent notes off of the internet. We have a little bit of a scent story. It says, "This is a woody fragrance!" Exclamation point. Balsam and Cedar is a timeless classic for a reason. Pine balsam scents mingle with brisk cedar wood, evoking a stroll through the forest, while nuanced base notes of warm amber offer a sense of comfort and calm. This deep woodsy fragrance creates a feeling of groundedness and connection to nature. And the scent notes on here, the top notes are crisp citrus, herbs, and red berry. What? The middle notes are pine balsam, cedar, and sandalwood. And the base notes are vanilla, warm amber, and musk. I mean, those scent notes, I do definitely pick up on the citrus, and I think that it's the citrus in the top note of this candle that kind of separates Yankee's Balsam and Cedar from a lot of other like Balsam and Cedar candles that we get this time of year. It gives it a bit of a sharpness. However, some of these other scent notes, red berry, I am absolutely not picking up on any red berry in this whatsoever. Pine balsam, of course. Cedar, absolutely. I think that actually the predominant scent note in here for me is the cedar note. The sandalwood, I don't really think so. Like, if there is sandalwood in here, it's getting all but lost to that very like sharp, the citrus and the cedar and the balsam, those 3 components in here are so sharp that just about everything else is getting lost to them. You know, sandalwood, vanilla, I don't pick up on that. Warm amber and musk, yeah, there is definitely, I wouldn't say musk, but there's definitely a little bit of like a smooth amber component in the base of this fragrance, which is nice because it does smooth out a little bit of that sharpness that you're getting, because it is a very sharp citrus note and a very sharp cedar note and a very sharp balsam note. So it's nice that there is that sort of amber in there to kind of bring it down just a little bit, and I like it. I've always liked this candle. However, and this is not the first time I've burned this candle. I think that last year I burned it in like the tall 2-wick tumbler format, and I'd say that the strength and throw was pretty much the same. And to say that, I'd say in my more open space, this was easily getting up to a 6.5. I did have it in the bedroom for a while. It was easily getting up to a 7 in the bedroom. And so this is indeed one of the strongest Yankee candles that I've burned, probably since last year when I burned the 2-wick Balsam and Cedar from Yankee Candle. I'd say that they were almost identical. The thing about the bigger 2-wick tumblers, though, is that you can let them burn longer and they last longer. So once I burn these 3 wicks from Yankee that I wanted to try out, I think I'm just gonna go back to purchasing like the bigger 2-wick pillars for the most part, because I'm really not noticing that big of a difference in the strength and throw when it comes to the pillar or the 3-wick. It's like either the fragrance is gonna be there or it's not, you know? And I mean, and those are, in my opinion, the only 2 formats that Yankee's putting out right now where you have any hopes of detecting really much strength or throw at all. So yeah, I'm probably gonna go back to the 2-wick tumblers. after I finish these candles. Yeah, I do like this one. I do like this one. Another reason why I like the 2 wicks from Yankee is because I think that they showcase the colored wax really nicely. You know, out of all of the bad decisions that Yankee makes with the weird label and the garbage can lid, out of all their weird decisions, the one thing that they always get right is their beautiful wax. I mean, this doesn't look so beautiful now, obviously, but it's very, very rare that their wax doesn't just look gorgeous. And they've really mastered the colored wax over at Yankee because the color is always so uniform and rich in their wax. You know how sometimes you get some colored wax candles from Village in particular, or even Homeworks, Kringle, Bath and Body Works? You don't see the same kind of pigmentation that you get with the Yankee candles and a lot of other brands. The pigmentation of the color with Yankee's candles are just always so on point. I really don't have any complaints about the way this candle performed. I will probably, the next time I purchase this candle, like I said, it's probably going to be in the 2-wick format because I don't notice much difference in strength and throw. Yeah, easily getting to like a 6.5 or a 7 in my more open space. It did have a couple of burns where it wasn't giving me great flames. I wouldn't say that it ever got to the point where it was like itty bitty, horrible, teeny tiny flames. Like it wasn't a full blown like dud out situation, but there were definitely some burns on it that were stronger than others. And that is not a problem that I get with the big 2-wick tumblers. Anyways, whatever, who cares? I say all this to say that my favorite format from Yankee Candle remains those like large 2-wick tumblers right now. But overall, I can't really say I have any major complaints about the way that this candle performed. And it's probably one of the strongest Yankee candles I've burned since last winter when I burned a Balsam and Cedar from Yankee Candle. Okay, moving on to some Goose Creek stuff that I finished up. I believe that this was a brand new fragrance this year from Goose Creek. It's called Vanilla Frost. And you guys know me, I will hoe myself out for a good vanilla candle. I really do love vanilla fragrances. I really, really do. This candle, unfortunately, was a little bit of a letdown for me for quite a few reasons. For one thing, we definitely had some quality control issues happening with the packaging. If this wraparound had been executed properly, I would have really liked it. Goose Creek seems to have a bit of a weird fetish for animals. Goose Creek just loves putting animals on their packaging, whether they're cartoon animals or photographs of animals or drawings of animals or AI generated animals. Goose Creek loves to put an animal on their candles. In fact, they have a new spring collection out right now, and one of the candles has a wolf, one has a ladybug, one has a butterfly. I mean, they really get into that over there at Goose Creek, sometimes with, better results than others. I don't care that much for these foxes. I guess they're kind of cute. What I do like about this wraparound is like the snowflakes and the sheerness of it. So it did look quite lovely when it was burning, but we had a little bit of a sloppy seam job on here. And then also, I'm not even sure if my camera's picking this up properly, but it almost looks like there was a bit of an issue with the printing of these wraparounds. Like it looks like there's something on this candle. And so for a really long time, I would be like rubbing it and trying to clean it off and trying to figure out why it looked kind of scuffed up and dusty and weird, but it just ended up being the way that the label was. And I know that because I had the same issue with this Arctic Air candle. And once again, I'm not sure it's really picking up on camera that well, but inside this sort of oval part, it's almost like there were a whole bunch of like scuff marks and stuff. And so that was kind of annoying. Goose Creek does suffer from some quality control issues sometimes, particularly when it comes to their packaging, but also unfortunately when it came to sort of the burn quality and the cleanliness of this candle. It was not great. I liked the fragrance well enough, but this candle was a bit of a fail for many reasons. The scent notes here are marshmallow snow, vanilla clouds, and white coconut cream. So this is a very classic, give us a wintertime vanilla. A lot of the times, we get vanilla candles in the winter and they'll give us a cooling effect by adding either a little bit of coconut or a little bit of mint or a little bit of lime. And that way you take like a vanilla fragrance, and by adding one of those things, it sort of gives the vanilla this sort of chilly, outdoorsy, sort of snowy feeling, kind of like Vanilla Snowflake from Bath and Body Works, which also has a coconut note in it, I believe. So yeah, vanilla, marshmallow, coconut. I liked the fragrance enough, but I wasn't over the moon about it, to be honest with you. Which is weird because I love vanilla fragrances, and Goose Creek usually does a fantastic job with their vanilla fragrances. I don't know how they managed to do it, but I really do think that Goose Creek has the strongest vanilla candles out there that you can get. When you pick up vanilla candles from a lot of brands, they're incredibly weak, but with Goose Creek, I find that their vanilla candles are consistently like nice and strong, and this candle was nice and strong. Getting back to the fragrance a little bit, it's nice. There's something about it that falls a little bit flat for me. It's not very three-dimensional. It's not super balanced. You don't really pick up on like a top, a heart, and a base note in here. It kind of just feels like all of the components of the fragrance are sort of squished together. Like, it's basically a coconut and vanilla fragrance, But it's not a coconut vanilla fragrance that's nearly as nice as at Bath and Body Works, that vanilla coconut candle. It's not nearly as nice as that is. This is kind of just one sort of very linear, middle note of a coconut vanilla. And it comes across as a little bit dry as opposed to being outdoorsy and brisk and wet and snowy and frosty. It comes across more to me like a little bit dry and dusty almost. It's not terrible. I go through a lot of vanilla candles and so I do get very nitpicky. There's been a lot of vanilla candles, and this just isn't top of the list for me. It just seems to fall a little bit flat. And then on top of that, I had some real issues with this one, just in terms of the cleanliness of the burn. So much so that when I got to this point here, I stopped burning it and I just put it under a candle lamp. And you can actually see that the wax has become really quite discolored. And this was just plain colored wax. This was not meant to be a colored wax either. Yeah, so I'd say that the first 2 or 3 burns were really good, and I'm very careful with Goose Creek. I think that if you want to get really good clean burns out of Goose Creek candles, you have to do 2 things. You have to keep the wicks really well trimmed, and you have to limit your burn times. I say limit the burn times to 2 hours on Goose Creek candles just to be safe. I never let this one burn for a lot longer than I should have, and still, by the time when we were about halfway, it started getting a little bit murky and a little bit dirty. By the time I was here, it was getting very dark and swirly, and I could tell that the fragrance was starting to get a little bit compromised, and so I just called it a day and I stopped burning it and I put the rest of it under a heat lamp. No complaints for strength and throw though. In my more open space, I'd say that this was easily getting to a 6.5 for strength and throw. I did have it in the bedroom, the second burn. The second burn here, I put it in the bedroom. It was 7.5 for strength and throw. Very noticeable, but not a particularly compelling fragrance for me. It really just kind of smelled a little flat. That's the best word I could really use to describe it. Yeah, kind of a bummer, Goose Creek. Vanilla Frost. Not going to be a repurchase for me or a recommendation for you. However, in this same collection, they also had Arctic Air. and Wonderland, which I love. And these candles were much more successful. I particularly really loved this Arctic Air candle. I think that this was also a new fragrance for Goose Creek this year. Brand new fragrance. Once again, do you see that there's kind of like almost like a ruching to the wraparound label? It's almost like the wraparound labels didn't really fit properly on the candles, and so they came to me a little bit warped. We've got polar bears. We've got a really, the wraparound looked really pretty when it was burning though. The way that it was kind of sheer and those snowflakes sort of glistened and gleamed when this candle was burning. It looked really nice for the most part, but you can definitely notice with like in full daylight or whatever, when the candle's not burning, the imperfections here, once again with this seam, it's crooked seam, the imperfections become very, very, very obvious when you're looking at it up close. The scent notes on Arctic Air are cool Arctic Air, frozen juniper, and vanilla icicles. And let me tell you, whew, this is a good one. This is so like fresh and minty and outdoorsy. Oh my goodness. I love this. Predominantly, this is a really airy, minty candle. Cool Arctic Air, frozen juniper, vanilla icicles. Yeah, there's a really like bright vanilla bean vanilla in here. Whereas this one, the vanilla in this vanilla frost almost seemed like the type of a low kind of vanilla fragrance that you would use in like a bakery candle. The vanilla note in this is like a really bright, like semi-sweet, bright, smooth vanilla bean. But predominantly what you get in here is just like a blast of like this really chilly peppermint. And I think it's wild that peppermint isn't actually listed in the scent notes here. I'm wondering if that's what they mean by cool Arctic air, is like that peppermint. But it's like one of those peppermints that's like mentholated. It's like clearing my sinuses. It's like fixing this cold that I've been struggling with a little bit throughout the week. It's just so bright and crisp and refreshing, and you do get just a little bit of a touch of that sort of like, not a woodsiness, but there's the juniper in here. You get just a little bit of a touch of that juniper vibe as well. Yeah, this was just wonderful. Oh my goodness. Whew. You know when it almost sort of like gets in your eyes, chills your eyes out? Like, I don't think this candle would necessarily be for everybody, but there's something, the reason why I like it is because it somehow manages to really seem like an authentic outdoorsiness. You know how that Twisted Peppermint, from Bath and Body Works, basically, it's got that same kind of very minty, almost mentholy vibe to it, but it smells more like candy. It smells a little bit more like an artificial candy situation than like an outdoorsy situation. This is a much more like bright, fresh, minty, but naturally occurring outdoorsy vibe. Oh my goodness, I really, really liked it. This might be my favorite like new candle that I burned in the wintertime from Goose Creek probably. I thought that this was fantastic. This performed a little bit better than that Vanilla Frost. Well, I mean, it performed quite a bit better. This candle, it wasn't until the very end there that it started to get a little bit murky and gross at the end. Like you can see, obviously it did get kind of swirly and discolored, but that didn't happen until like this last burn, right? This last burn here, I burned it until I could see the wick nickels, and then I let it go off for quite a while. And so I feel like if I had blown it out a little bit sooner, we wouldn't have ended up with this sort of discoloration as much as we had. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was a much cleaner burn than that Vanilla Frost candle was, and the strength and throw was fantastic. This was definitely like a 6.5 or a 7 in my more open space. I really liked it in my more open space, so I never put it into the bedroom or anything. I kept it in the more open area because, yeah, it had more than enough strength and throw, and it was just really like crisp and refreshing and outdoorsy. I really, really liked that Arctic Air candle. And in a very, very similar sort of vein to that, we got this Snowball fight. Whereas the Arctic Air candle kind of has that burst of like mintiness. This, I also pick up on a little bit of mint in here, but this is kind of like a berry version. This would be like this Snowball fight. I would call it like Arctic Air and berries, right? It almost felt like it was kind of a spin-off of that candle. I can't remember if this Snowball fight was brand new or not this year. Out of all of the candles that I ordered from Goose Creek this winter, I think that this collection was the most beautiful. This collection was just excellent looking. The wraparounds had this sort of glossiness to them that sort of gave it kind of a bit of a glass vibe, like a glassiness. The other candles in this collection were like that chestnut firewood candle, snowy branches, blankets and snowflakes. This was by far my favorite collection that we got from Goose Creek this winter. And there's like these little sort of silver speckles of snow all over the wraparound label that sort of twinkled when the candle was burning. I just thought this collection was so lovely and definitely had some of my favorite fragrances in it as well. Anyway, so Snowball fight, the scent notes are snowy vanilla, frosted blooms, red berries, and sweet musk. Now, I am not a really big fan of fruity fragrances, to be honest with you. And I'm not a huge fan of like fruity fragrances in the wintertime. And Bath and Body Works does this a lot. You know, they give us like bright Christmas morning and snowy peach berry and strawberry snowflakes. And those are all just really pretty straightforward, like fruity berry candles without, in my opinion, that much of an actual sort of chilly or wintry vibe to it. But Snowball fight is actually like this sort of outdoorsy, like frozen berry situation that I just loved. I mean, it just says red berries. I would say that there's like a little bit of raspberry and a little bit of strawberry in here. Yeah, and this candle did have a beautiful, beautiful blue wax. Doesn't look quite as beautiful anymore. You know, Goose Creek definitely doesn't do as good of a job with their colored waxes like Yankee candle does, like I was just talking about. But this Snowball fight was fantastic. It's got that sort of it's got a minty component to it as well. And it doesn't say minty anywhere in the fragrance notes. It just says snowy vanilla, frosted blooms, red berries, and sweet musk. And so I wonder if like the frosted blooms, that sort of frosted note is meant to signify that there's just a little bit of a mintiness in here. It's not nearly as minty as that Arctic Air candle is, but it's definitely got a little bit of that sort of cooling, slightly mentholated vibe to it, a little bit of muskiness, and a red berry note that's very kind of granulated and a little bit sharp, but in a good way. Usually I don't like berry fragrances that are real, like sort of highly pitched and granular and sharp, but for some reason this one is smoothed down quite nicely by that vanilla and the mintiness, and there's a muskiness. There's a really nice sort of rich muskiness in the base of this fragrance that just sort of ties the whole thing together and makes it work really, really well. This is a really interesting one. Yeah, I'd have to say that as far as like berry fragrances go in the winter time, this is one of the best like winter berry fragrances that I've encountered in a while. Like for a first time, you know what I mean? I have never tried this one before. and I really liked it. This is a candle that I will probably start buying every single winter if Goose Creek puts it out. It performed really well too. It was a really nice clean burn. You can see there's no sooting or discoloration really around the side of the jar there. A really beautiful blue wax. It never dudded out. It never gave me itty bitty wicks or teeny tiny flames. It was a pretty good, nice, cool, clean burn all the way from the top to the bottom. The strength and throw was good. It wasn't as strong as those other two candles. I'd say that in my more open space, this maxed out at like a 6 probably. I'd say it was around like a 5.5 or a 6. I could definitely tell that it was there. I did burn it in the bedroom for a little while, and in the bedroom it was really getting up there. It was definitely hitting like 6.5, maybe almost getting to a 7 in the bedroom. So I actually burned it in the bedroom quite a bit because I really liked that it was so noticeable and really had like a personality to it. There was something about this fragrance that was a little bit like more unique, you know? Like I said earlier, like we always get like these winter versions of fruit fragrances, but this is a winter berry fragrance that I think was really, really, really done well. Anyways, folks, that's all I've got for you this week in terms of candles. My goodness, how many? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14 candles. Quite a few notable ones. I'm glad I finally got to talk about some of this stuff from the ice cream collection. Biggest disappointment was probably the weakest version of vanilla balsam that I've ever encountered. I mean, that was a really big bummer. I don't think I'm gonna get into a ton of candle company news. You know, January is usually a pretty slow month. Lots of spring stuff happening at Bath and Body Works though, and that's always exciting. I've got like the spring candle haul video, just posted that. I'm just starting to turn my candle closet over to spring. Right? I sort of reset the candle closet like 4 times a year when the seasons change, and I still have about 2 weeks left of sort of wintry candles to burn, but I'm starting to get all the spring candles sort of set up behind them there, and I'm getting ready to make the big switch pretty soon here. It is still cold up here in Calgary. Like, we are not experiencing spring as far as the weather goes quite yet, but to be honest with you, I don't really care. I wanted to give a Sunday shout out to Tracy over at 3 Wick Thesis. Tracy has some videos out right now that I think a lot of you guys would be very interested in watching. She has one video, I will link to both of them below, because I can't remember exactly what the videos were called, but one of them was like Candle Care 101, and she just goes through how you should maintain your candles, you know, so that hopefully you can avoid like a vanilla frost situation over here. So she talks a lot in that video about how to trim your wicks, the best way to trim your wicks, what to do if your candle is dudding out, like how to extinguish your candles properly. She goes through all of that stuff in her Candle Care 101 video. So I'm going to link to it below. I think a lot of you guys would really, really appreciate that video and get a lot out of it. I can personally, like, I watched her whole video. I can sign off on everything that she says in that video. That's exactly what I do to like take care of my candles when I'm burning them as well, because it is one of the number one questions that I get is, why do my candles still look so clean when I've finished burning them? And honestly, it's really all about like trimming your wicks and limiting your burn times, but Tracy really gets into it in that Candle Care 101 video, so I highly recommend checking it out. I'll link to it below. She also has a great video out right now. I think she called it Got Soot. And that's another question that I get all the time. Like, are my walls covered in soot? Like, what do I do to like mitigate the sootiness? Tracy put out a video all about what she does in her home to like clean soot off of her walls, how to keep it from becoming too big of a problem, all of that good stuff. So I'm going to link to that video below as well. Tracy's really, really excellent. She's a really smart cookie. She's a great great lady and a really wonderful resource. If you're not already subscribed to Tracy over at 3 Wick Thesis, then what the heck are you doing? Go give Tracy some love because she is excellent. Wanted to get into the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City real quick. Not the best timing though. The first reunion episode is out now, but I haven't watched it yet. I know, I'm sorry you guys, I'm behind. The plan is to actually watch that tonight. The first reunion episode is out, but we did see the season finale. Let me tell you, that season finale did not disappoint. So they all took a trip to Greece together. Like, that was their big sort of like Housewives year-end trip this year. They've all gone to Greece and they all put on these like color blocking dresses and had their photos taken on the boat. And they've been fighting with each other quite a bit. Not as bad as they were fighting with each other in the first half of the season, but they've pretty much been at each other's throats on and off throughout, you know, pretty much the entire season as per usual. Meredith and Lisa's behavior has just been completely unacceptable in my personal opinion. But anyway, so they're all in Greece and Angie or Heather, I think they arranged for them. They wanted to turn all of the girls' stories into a real life Greek tragedy. And this was just one of the most bizarre things that I've ever seen before in my life, but it really actually did make for a pretty entertaining finale. And so I'm not sure exactly how it worked, but they hired like this woman to tell all of the girls' story in like the form of a Greek tragedy. And there was like interpretive dancing and like it was like this dramatic reading. Like, I guess this woman like interviewed all of the girls one at a time and like asked all of the girls what they think about all of the other girls that are in the group, right? And so then all of the girls go to like watch this performance of this Greek tragedy that's like based off of their lives. And it was just so weird. It was like, once there was a woman who, many said, had 2 faces. And so she journeyed inward and she journeyed outward and she had arguments with people who loved her and she had arguments with people who hated her. And she, like, it's just like this weird like narrative that's like loosely based off of like all of the crap that they all told this woman about each other. You know, it always cracks me up when the housewives are like, they've got to play these games, you know, like they'll all sit down at dinner one day and one of them will be like, and this goes for any of the Real Housewives franchises, you know, they'll all sit down for lunch one day and there's always a woman who's like, hey guys, I thought it would be really fun if we just like played this hilarious game that I just came up with on the spot. How about we go around in a circle and we each say one thing that we absolutely hate about everybody else. Doesn't that sound fun? So basically, they like did that with this woman who like turned all of their stories and their fights into like these Greek tragedy tales. And there was like interpretive dancing while the stories were like being read. And it's like, once upon a time, this girl lived upon a hill and her friends were trying to bring her down, but she didn't let them. She stood up and she rose up. I mean, it was just so bizarre and so hilarious. I was really having a hoot watching that bizarre Greek tragedy thing. Anyways, they're all back in the United States now and they filmed the reunion a little while back. We know that Bronwyn has announced her separation to Todd, which I would just like to say that I predicted at the very beginning of this season. And her husband, Todd, is this old, grumpy fuddy-duddy who doesn't want to have anything to do with this at all. I've got a feeling that this show is going to ruin their marriage. I really don't think that Todd and Bronwyn are going to last. He's just so grumpy and doesn't want the cameras in his house at all. Not exactly like it takes a real psychic to predict the breakup of a housewife marriage, but I'm pretty proud of myself for having said on camera that they'll be separated by the end of this season, and sure sure enough, they are. Anyways, the reunion's been filmed and we have seen some clips from it. I'm gonna watch it tonight. But the one clip that I've seen is Andy Cohen just has it. Throws his card, it's like, has it. He gets up and he walks away. So I can only imagine that the reunion's gonna be pretty juicy. And I assume that it eventually gets to a point where they're all just fighting with each other so much that Andy loses control of the situation and storms off set. I don't know if we've ever seen Andy Cohen storm off set before because he could not rein them in enough. Ooh, I bet he was mad. Ooh, he must have been mad, girl. Anyway, so I'm very excited to watch that tonight. And then over at the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, things are starting to ramp up in a pretty good way. I mean, Bose and Sutton are really continuing to just really kind of bore me. Dorit is really serving. I mean, Dorit went from being one of my least favorite Real Housewives ever to like now she's pretty much holding the whole show together. And one of the really only interesting things that's actually happening all has to do with like Dorit and her divorce. And we have Rachel Zoe. Rachel Zoe joined the cast this season. And she actually is really an interesting personality. I'm liking Rachel Zoe. She seems like a really good mother. It definitely feels like, you know, the main reason why she wanted to do the Real Housewives was so that she could talk trash about her ex-husband on TV constantly. She really seems to be getting a kick out of doing that. I guess her husband cheated on her with some woman who's like half her age. And I do feel sorry when there's like younger children involved, but hey, whatever. Rachel Zoe is Rachel Zoeing, and it's quite entertaining. And then there's this new girl called Amanda, and we hadn't heard much from her in the first couple of episodes, but the cracks are really starting to show now. I don't think that this Amanda's gonna last very long. I've got a feeling that Amanda, she might be one of those housewives. Every now and then they'll drop in like a one season wonder, you know, just to sort of drop them into the middle of the show, drop them into the middle of the friendship group and let things blow up a little bit. You know, and then we usually never really hear from them again. I've got a feeling that Amanda might be the little bomb that gets dropped this season because things are already starting to really ramp up and the women are not enjoying her all that much. And it sounds like her career might not be entirely legitimate. Like, seems like she's a little bit of a grifter, you know, a little bit of one of those self-help gurus, you know, like back in the day, what would we call them? We used to call them like motivational speakers, you know, people who just give like very, very generic life advice, but they're so charismatic that they're able to convince people to pay them like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for this generic life advice. So Amanda, her whole claim to fame is that like she is a money wizard. Like she knows all about financial success and how to make money and how to live your best life while earning your best living and all that kind of stuff. And the cracks are really starting to show. A lot of the girls on this cast are like old money, you know, not all of them, but there's always this sort of old money versus new money when it comes to the Beverly Hills women. And Amanda is definitely new money, right? And she gets on the airplane when they're on their way to go for their trip or whatever, and she's just decked out in Louis Vuitton, but like all the Louis Vuitton stuff that has like the giant L and the giant V like all over it, like a hat covered in the LV logo, a scarf covered in the LV logo. And so she gets on the plane and you see Bose in her confessional kind of being like, it was so hard for me to tell what brand, what designer Amanda was wearing because, you know, I could only see about 100 different Louis Vuitton logos on her outfit. I mean, like, very, very shady. And Amanda also seems to be one of those girls that's a little bit of a one-upper, you know? Like, and I'm sure you guys know somebody in your life who's kind of like this. They always have to, like, one-up whatever is being like said in a conversation, you know? Like, let's say you're chatting with a group of like, not all really super close friends, but you're chatting in a group of people and you might say, oh yeah, and so then, you know, I went out and I treated myself to a great manicure afterwards. And some person will be like, I just love going to get manicures. I get manicures at like one of the nicest salons in the whole city. And my manicurist used to do Celine Dion's nails. You know, like that type of person who is always gonna kind of one up whatever else somebody says when it comes to like material possessions or living a luxurious lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. And so Amanda purchased Kyle's house off of her. I mean, beautiful house. I mean, must be like a $10-20 million house. I mean, who knows, right? Kyle moved out of it because obviously, you know, she was upgrading, right? And so Amanda purchased Kyle's house, and Amanda's been making a real good point of being like, yeah, she's like, we've actually been able to put a lot of work into it and really make some great improvements. We're so happy with how far the house has come since we first purchased it, you know, as if like when she first purchased it off of Kyle, it was just a massive dump and she's had to put all of this work into like restoring it, like just a little bit extra, Amanda. But anyways, the cracks are really starting to show with this whole like, what does she do for a living? Like, it might end up turning out that it's one of those like weird multi-level marketing schemes where you're like a financial and a wellness coach and you get thousands and thousands of people to pay you money, pay you thousands of dollars for you to give them advice. And the advice is like, you know, I'll make sure that you get up really, really early in the morning because an early morning is a clear head, and make sure that you eat your fruits and vegetables because what you eat is what you manifest. Just people like these life coaches that just charge people thousands of dollars for the most like generic advice that you could hear anywhere. You know, like Mel Robbins, Jay Shetty. Mel Robbins is actually a really, really good example. Of any of you guys ever heard of Mel Robbins? She's one of these women that have like one of those improve your life podcasts, and she's always got big glasses on and she's always like holding a pen so that you know she's talking about some real serious things going on. And her advice is always like, just remember to like manifest. You know, you have to visualize things so that you can do them. And if you see it and you believe it and you manifest it, you will achieve it. You know, like people that give like that kind of advice, it sounds like that's what Amanda basically does, except when it comes to money. Okay, so Dorit right now is in one of the worst financial situations ever because her and her husband PK have separated, and rumors were that Dorit and PK were having big money problems, like even long before they separated. So I'm sure that the separation is only making things way, way worse. And Dorit is literally sitting down for dinner with Bose and Amanda, and Dorit is telling them, she's like, I don't know if we have any retirements. I don't know if we own any stocks. PK says, oh, actually, I should go back here because that's not how Dorit talks. Dorit's like, I don't actually know if we have any retirement funds, to be quite frank with you, frankly. I don't know if we have any stocks in the stock market. Like, I was always kept out of those conversations. I don't know what PK was doing with the finances. I don't know what kind of choices PK was making with all of our money that we were earning as a couple. PK would just pay the bills, and I just trusted him as the man to do that in the relationship. And Bose is like, what, girl? You don't even know if you got any retirement funds. You don't even know if you got any stocks. That's insane. And Bose is like, she was like the CEO of Netflix at some point. Bose is a really, really smart, successful woman, right? And so it's Bose and Amanda and Dorit. And Dorit is telling them all, like, they're headed for financial ruin. Dorit doesn't know anything about her and PK's finances whatsoever. And so Bose looks at Amanda and is like, oh, well, Perfect. Amanda here is like the financial guru. Amanda has like 5 books out right now about how to make money, how to earn money, how to save money. Bose, if you were Dorit in this situation with this divorce looming, Amanda, what would you do? What would your financial advice be for Dorit? And then Amanda is like, well, my advice for you would just be like, you need to picture your future life and picture what you want money to mean to you. You need to picture your future self, and you need to picture the things that you want to achieve, and then you need to find a way to grow yourself into that manifestation. And Bose is just like, what the hell kind of bad advice is this? Like, I think that the viewers at home, us, like me specifically, and Bose as well, we were all expecting Amanda to say something like, well, first of all, you got to get a really good divorce lawyer. And you've got to get a divorce lawyer that not only specializes in like international divorce issues, because PK's from England, you need to get a divorce lawyer that not only knows like the California divorce and marriage laws really well, but somebody who knows like an international, someone that also has like an international knowledge of divorce law. And then you need to hire a forensic accountant, and you need to make sure you find a forensic accountant and get him contracted personally to you. Like, this was the type of advice that we were expecting this Amanda, this financial guru, that's the advice that we were expecting her to tell Dorit. But instead what we get is, you need to visualize how you want to be with your money in the future and try to like manifest that. Like, how the heck do you do that? So funny. So basically, it's starting to feel like this new Amanda character is really just a great big like scam artist who just managed to like podcast and write, and maybe she's running one of those like self-improvement multi-level marketing things where it's like you start to coach other people to become coaches, and then they recruit other people under them. Like, it's starting to sound like it's one of those weird like shady business situations, and so I cannot wait to see like how this turns out. I think that Amanda was literally just plopped into the middle of this show to actually give us somebody with some skeletons in their closet, give us a little bit of juice, give us a little bit of a personality. Like, I don't think Amanda has any idea what she's gotten herself into, and I just cannot wait to see how this plays out. Anyways, that's all I've got to say about the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. What are your guys' plans tonight? I'm just hanging out with the boyfriend, maybe go out for dinner and then have like a cute night in at home. I need to catch up on my TV. Like I said, I'm behind an episode of Beverly Hills. I'm behind an episode of Salt Lake City. I've also been watching Industry on HBO, which is really good. But what I'm really excited about is that tonight on HBO, it's the first episode of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And in fact, I have this book here. I was reading this while I was on my vacation. So this is from the same author who did Game of Thrones. So it's another Game of Thrones spinoff, and it's called A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And I actually took this on my last holiday with me, and I read through the whole thing. It's this really, really beautifully done, like illustrated version of the book. And so this is a little bit different, because if you've watched Game of Thrones and you've watched the other spinoff that there is called House of the Dragon, those shows are all about like the kings and the queens, and it's very high stakes, and people are dying and going to war, and it's very, very heavy, right? What I liked about George R.R. Martin's A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is that it's a little bit of a lighter story. There's quite a bit more of a sense of humor in here, and it's kind of your typical sort of lone wolf and cub story. So it's all about Sir Duncan the Tall, who is a hedge knight, who gets this new squire, because, you know, knights have to have the squires that help like shine up their sword boards and like, you know, fix their outfits and stuff like that. So it's all about this really young, inexperienced knight and his young, inexperienced squire. And they're basically, you know, roaming the countryside, trying to do good deeds and having a bit of a chuckle along the way. And the first time that I read these books was actually when they came out like many, many years ago, because the TV series actually is based off of 3 sort of like mini books called novellas. And I mean, I'm assuming that since the show is about to come out, they put all 3 of those books together in one big volume and called it A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And even though I read it a long time ago when they first came out, I wanted to read it one last time before the show starts. And the show starts tonight. And I'm really, really interested to see what they do with it, because like I said, it's not the same sort of like really heavy, like royalty killing each other story. It's a much more kind of fun and frivolous, like it's almost a bit of a comedy, and the episodes are only going to be a half hour long, so I'm really, really interested to see. I'm always interested to see the choices that are made when a book that I've really loved is sort of adapted into like a movie or a television show, because a lot of the time, you know, things get ruined, right? But it's also always really fun, I think, to sort of see something come to life that you've just been picturing in your brain for like a really, really long time. So yeah, super excited to curl up on the couch and watch the first episode of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms this evening. Anyways, that's really all I've got going on. Let me know in the comment section what you guys are burning right now, what your plans are tonight. I would love to hear from you. If you could do me a big favor and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and if you could give me some of your hype points, I would really, really appreciate that. You guys can follow me on Instagram at allabootcandles and email your burning questions to allabootcandles@gmail.com. I didn't have any burning questions to answer in this week's Weekly Wax Wrap-Up, so please send me something to talk about next week in the Weekly Wax Wrap-Up. And until next time, my dear, gorgeous, and beautiful candle-loving friends, let's burn some candles and bitch about it. Thanks, you guys. Bye for now. I'll see you next time.